I call this Town of Adams Board of Selectmen meeting to order Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. First item on the agenda, will everyone please stand and join the Board of Selectmen in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the approval of minutes. We have two sets, December 21st, 2022, and January 4th, 2023. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to waive a reading of the minutes and approve them as provided for December 21st and January 4th.
Motion by Rick, do we have a second?
I will second.
Second by Christine, any discussion, changes? Joe?
Yeah, I just have a couple of changes. On the December 21st, on the very last page, there should be a W after Carlo. Very last page. And one change for Wednesday, January 4th, page 2. The building inspector, you misspelled, you have Gardner, it should be Garner, right, okay.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, motion and second. That includes Joe's updates. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed none, unanimous decision. Next is public comment. Anyone in the audience who would like to address the Board of Selectmen with anything that is not on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, we will move along. Old business, A, review and approve application for common vic license for Gomez Enterprises doing business as McDonald's, 2 Commercial Street, Adams. Do we have an update?
I'll pass it on to Ms. Hammond.
I was able to get in touch with the owners who informed me that they sold, the business was sold in late December 2022, which I guess is why there was some mix-up of where communications were going. It was straightened out, and they did come in complete payment, complete paperwork, and payment of taxes.
Okay, good. All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application for the common vic license for Gomez Enterprises doing business as McDonald's at 2 Commercial Street here in Adams.
Motion by Christine, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Rick. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, unanimous decision. Next, old business item B, review and approve renewal of in-holders license for Mount Royal Inn, 99 Howard Ave in Adams. I'll hand it over to the town administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it over to Mr. Garner, our Director of Inspectional Services. So that everyone recalls, we've had some lengthy conversations about the property. We've had at least, I believe, 3 meetings at this point where the property has been a topic of conversation. At its last meeting, none of the paperwork had been completed, I believe, for the property, nor had proper inspection by inspectional services been conducted. The board had ordered the property owner to make an appointment to get that inspection completed, and at the same time, to have town council begin the steps to file paperwork for an injunction if it was needed. Mr. Garner has informed me that he was on the property along with the fire chief and is prepared this evening to provide an update to the board on that point.
So I inspected the property with Fire Chief Pansecki, and Mr. Bocari, the owner of the Mount Royal Inn, was also present. We went through the units. There was damage to fire alarm components. The fire alarm system was compromised. Fortunately, Mr. Bocari had emptied out the building per advice from his attorney because he has no license, so therefore he has no insurance. So he emptied out the building so no one was in there. So there's a lot of damage inside there. He's taking care of that currently. He is working towards compliance. As of last night at 7 o'clock, Mr. Pansecki signed off on his section of the inspection. He got all the paperwork he needed, so the alarm system is going and so forth. But I still have to do another inspection there because there's an illegal office in room 5 that should not be in there. So I don't know where they're at on that. Plus, I have to look at the fire-rated ceilings and so forth in there because there's holes through the ceiling and so forth. So once I do my final inspection, I can sign off and we'll be okay. Mr. Bakari is working with me. I just have not received any calls for reinspection yet.
Okay, discussion, board. Christine?
Is Mr. Bakari here? It's a rhetorical question. Because his lawyer did ask us to table this on January 4th, until which time he could be present before our board on January 18th for us to hear this. So I just wanted to state for everybody who's watching and anybody who's in the room that Mr. Bakari is not here.
Thank you. Anyone? Okay.
And I'm just going to say, as somebody who seconded the motion to table that, I'm not really inclined to put it back on the table at this time. I'll just state that for right now.
Howard, anything?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Rick?
No, I think, you give him the opportunity to get this second inspection. He may not have called because the work isn't completed yet.
I have no clue. I won't go there until he calls me, so.
Right. And considering it's empty right now,
Yeah.
which is our biggest concern, I'd say we leave it on the table and deal with it next meeting.
Joe?
Yeah, once again, as Christine mentioned, this has been ongoing, and he's really showed no willingness to come forward. That man should be here today. He made a verbal promise that he was going to be here, and, you just get tired of that kind of stuff after a while. But as you had mentioned, everybody is out of the building, okay, and now he has no insurance till he gets the inspection by you. So I don't know if you can answer this question, but how is that affecting the Lewison house?
I have no idea, and nor do I care.
Yeah.
This inspection is about the Mount Royal Inn.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the
Well, I
Lewison
know
house.
contractually, but it does have something to do with homeless people. And that's something that, as select board, I think that we have to keep in mind. And I'd like to go through the chairman.
Sure.
There's a gentleman up there who's taping this, and he's from the Lewison house. And
Okay.
he should,
Per Mass General Law, if anyone in the audience is going to tape any part of this meeting, you must inform the chair.
Okay.
Could you, what is your name?
Craig Mitchell. I'm just doing a Zoom. I'm not recording it for any other purpose, just so that I could share it with people who are
yeah, I'm not,
to watch it live kind of thing.
I just hear recording stopped.
Yeah, who are the
Yeah, I
people?
just stopped it.
Can I ask that through the chair?
Sure.
Who are the individuals that you're connecting with that can't get community television or be present?
Yes, they're unable to make it tonight.
And who are they?
It would be my boss at the Lewison House.
Okay. And just for the record, this would be the third meeting that somebody from the Lewison House has recorded or opened up a Zoom link or a phone line during our meeting without notifying us.
Kathy Keiser was also at the inspection, but Mr. Bakari asked her to leave because she would not allow anyone to speak before the inspection, so he asked her to leave.
So for verification through legal counsel, Attorney St. John, Mass General Law requires that anyone that is going to tape any or all of the meeting must identify themselves to the chair.
Can I text? Am I allowed to text?
Wait till I'm finished. Through the chair, and as soon as that's done, then they're allowed to do so. Correct?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Jerry? I'll get back to Joe if he has anything else. Joe, anything else?
No, I don't have anything other than well, I guess I have one other thing. Now, once he clarifies all of these problems that he has, and he has his license back, should that come to fruition, now, do you have the right as our building commissioner to go down there at any time and ask to look around?
Yes,
Okay,
I can enter any commercial property legally. I can't enter residential as 1 or 2 family, but anything commercial,
Right.
multifamily and up, I can enter any building at any time and request an inspection. So can the Board of Health.
yeah, okay, I just want to know that because that may be an ongoing problem, and so if you have the right to do that, I would encourage, by speaking through our chair, our town administrator, that you make a few surprise visits down there.
Yes, and they can ask me to leave, and I do have to leave, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, that proves guiltiness sometimes.
Attorney St. John, the board did request at the last meeting for you to begin the process of, I'm looking for the words, injunction or?
Yes.
Injunction. And I did talk to you, and you were working on the paperwork. We had some progress, and McDonald's paid right away, so that was taken care of. So what's that, where are you in that situation?
Well, I've drawn up the paperwork to seek an injunction, and one of the things I haven't drawn up yet, and which is critical to the success of asking for an injunction, would be an affidavit from inspectional services or from the fire chief telling the court that there's a public safety issue there that requires the court to stop the business right now. And what I'm hearing from Mr. Garner are encouraging signs to me that you may not have to go that route because the occupants are out. So that lessens the danger to the public. I mean, not eliminate it, but it lessens the danger. And it seems to me that Mr. Garner and Chief Panseki have a good grasp of what's going on down there. And with an upcoming inspection with someone who seems to be cooperating somewhat, it looks like there may be some progress on the horizon here. But I want to reiterate, I stand ready to go with whatever information. If Mr. Garner reports or the chief reports, we've got a problem down there and he's housing people, let's do something. I've got the papers drawn up and can move on it.
Okay. All right, so is there any action from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say I sent an email to you and Jay regarding this issue.
You did, yes.
And I wasn't very happy with it. I'm not going to discuss it in public, but I just didn't think it was right that we did a unanimous vote at your prodding, and you were right. And then the next morning, I received an email saying that, oh, we're not going to go forward with this injunction because I had and I won't mention who said, I had a dynamic talk with our town council, and because of this reason, which I won't, that we're not going to go forward with the injunction at this point.
Okay, so let's talk about it. You can't just make statements like that.
Okay.
So McDonald's, the next day, they called. All right, so there was no reason to proceed with an injunction.
State McDonald's.
Okay. And I did talk to legal counsel, and we, like you just mentioned, if there's progress, there really isn't the need to submit the injunction to a judge, because the judge will be requesting the inspection information and that we didn't have yet. So you were working the paperwork, you were going to get it ready, just like you just mentioned, and when inspection came back indicating that that the individuals could be in jeopardy, their health and safety, that you would submit that paperwork. And there's no one's in there, so we're making some progress. So if you go to a judge, as you mentioned, you wouldn't get very far until you had the inspection.
Well, I think
I
that
want you
was
to speak for yourself.
critical component, because I was aware that, the Mr. Garner was going to do an inspection when Mr. Bakari returned from his overseas trip.
Right.
And it did take place. But one of the critical pieces of this is not just simply you don't have a license, but when you start looking at shutting down a business like this, you have to also identify what's the risk of this business continuing. And if the judge is aware, well, there's an inspection on, I think it was January 12th or whatever the date was, there's an inspection. Well, what's the inspection show? Does it show that there's, imminent danger? And what we're hearing today is the results of the inspection, one of which is that there was some issue at the buildings such that the buildings were vacated. There was no insurance coverage, so there's various pressures on Mr. Bakari, other than what the town is doing, to ensure that there's no risk of harm to other people. So those things came into play. If the reverse were true, and we were told as a result of this inspection that this is dangerous, whatever the items were that were identified, then we would be in court looking for an injunction the next day.
Okay?
Well, I see that Mr. Bakari just came in, but I'd like to state in, I know I'm most of the time in this board, I'm in a no-win situation, but the reason I received is that we couldn't afford to house 30 people, and that was what I got for a response, because we didn't have the financial means to do it. And we didn't know about this decision that was made to stop going forward with the injunction was made the next morning before we did have the information from our town building commissioner. So I stopped there.
Okay, you all set?
Was the process stopped?
No, it's not stopped.
What I've done is I've drawn up the paperwork. I haven't filed anything in court yet because I want to make sure that what I tell the court is accurate, that there is a hazard or there's not a hazard, whatever it is. But if I'm looking for an injunction because of a public health and safety matter, I better have my ducks in a row before I ask a judge to do something. I mean, it makes sense. You're an attorney.
That was the conversation we had, and that was the information I presented to this board that wasn't necessarily presented that Wednesday night. After you spoke with Attorney Grandchamp, and we had a conversation. Any communications that we have are in the interest of the town and interest of the board. And in this situation, it is a dynamic situation. We know that Lewison House has people there, people who are unhoused and already vulnerable. We have a life safety issue, and the actions of the town could have greater implications, that of which, at the time, we made a balancing act. There's nothing abnormal about that in any way, shape, or form. Nor was the injunction able to be filed the next day or immediately thereafter. Ed said he hasn't even finished the affidavit yet to speak with inspectional services. So there's no process that was wrong. There's no decision by the board that wasn't acted upon. It's a dynamic situation. It's a sensitive situation. Clearly, the number of people here in the audience indicates that people are watching this, and the town of Adams is doing the right thing, but we're also not unreasonable about it either. So that's the town administrator's view of it. I stand by what I said. I stand by my conversations with town council, and I stand by the advice I give to this board.
Mr. Bakari, could you please come to the podium, please? Could you just state your name for the record, please?
Sayed Bukhari,
Thank you. So our building inspector just spoke, indicating that he did go down for an inspection, along with Chief Pansecchi. Chief Pansecchi has since approved, I believe, the permit. However, our building inspector has not been called to do the final inspection. You did indicate that you have been making some progress.
That was for room number 5, which he wanted to be empty. So I brought all the material. The room number 5 is empty,
Okay.
and everything is as per the code now.
Okay, did you want to come up, Jerry, please, again? So you need to do another inspection, and that was one area, but there's others too that you need to.
Yes.
Okay, well, could you just re-explain that, please?
Yes, and through the chair, I've got people telling me that when other people come and someone's at the microphone, that the speaker should come closer because you cannot hear what that person is saying.
All right, thank you. Yes, one of the rooms has a hole through the ceiling that compromises the fire barrier that goes through the ceiling. And I have to check the smoke detectors to make sure they're not collapsed or crushed or damaged anymore. We do have the inspection report from Lee Audio. I just need to visually see what they've done. So
So you're
once
just waiting for a phone call and
Yes.
an appointment to do the final inspection?
Correct.
Okay, so can that happen?
You see, like when he said the smoke detector, Lee Audio has clearly mentioned on a 9 pages report that they have checked each and every smoke detector that was sent to fire chief. Fire chief have gone through it, approved it, and he said, I'm signing on it. Other than the hole on this one room only, I got that fixed. The third issue was the room number 5, all the belongings were there. They are not there since yesterday. And again, even if I get the license today, the hotel is not going to be operative for the next about 15 to 20 days, maybe a month.
Okay, so currently no one is in that motel?
Not at all.
Right, okay.
The reason being because everything has to be painted. I mean, he has seen with me, we have gone through each and every room, the carpet needs to be cleaned, a lot of furniture needs to be refixed or new one has to come. So basically, and again, when I talked to Jeff Grandcham, he said there is a insurance risk and anything, so don't even have anybody. So the day I left there, everybody has moved out of that facility.
Okay, so okay, great. The last question is, will you be contacting the building inspector in a
Yes,
very near
definitely.
term to be able to do his final inspection?
I mean, he can do the final inspection tomorrow. I mean, those two things are taken care. It's they're on there. But even if that's done, I'm not opening it
Understood, but,
because I just need to get everything in place first. And since it's going to be back to the hotel or motel permit, it has to be done the right way, the way it did it before.
yeah, our concern is to ensure that the inspection is done as soon as
He
possible.
can be here tomorrow. I mean,
Okay.
and he knows which 2 rooms, and he can go there. But even if it's done, it's not going to be operational at least for a month.
Okay.
At least.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, I have through the chair. One thing that I would like done, because in the last meeting there was a little mix-up. I'd like everything emailed so we have something to track it with instead of you saying, well, I talked to him and that type of thing. If you can email, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, I could talk to
Because I
him.
remember there was a lot of, the last time that there was a discussion here, you said, well, I spoke to him, and there was a debate going back and forth. So if we have a paper trail, we know that that is what happened, if you understand what I'm saying. And a question to you, now that you're in contract with the Lewison House, is that contract still going on, or is it expired?
I mean, it has been abandoned. The proper word is abandoned. No
Well,
way
if
forward.
it has to be done by the law. You can't just say, I'm gonna
I'm
ban.
not did it. My lawyer has tell them that
Okay.
because of this thing, it's not continuing. And again, moving forward, if we have to, everybody has to be on the board first from the town, if I desire so.
Okay, but what I wanna know is, now, when was the contract till?
That was last May of 2022, the contract came to an end.
Okay, then fine. If it came to an end, then
At
that's,
that time, all the fillings were there and was as per the oral agreement between us.
but you were taking people in after the contract ended, so that was financial gain for you.
It was I don't want to go into that debate.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a financial loss. I mean, they were all there, so again, that was not to be discussed here.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Jerry, can you come up to the mic, please? So Jerry, after you finish the inspection, you'll report the results to the town administrator. The town administrator will inform the board of the results. Okay?
Correct.
And that should be tomorrow.
Should be tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to him out in the hallway.
Fantastic. All right. Anything else from the board? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you.
All right, is there anything else under old business? Moving on to new business, ratification, and I don't want to get the first name incorrect.
Kara.
Kara. Ratification of Kara Farrell? Farrell, thank you, sorry.
Come on up, Kara.
And she was here. Outstanding. This is for the Shared Services HR Director. Jay, did you want to read your?
I'll read the letter, sure.
Hello.
This letter is to advise the Board of Selectmen that Ms. Kara Farrell has been appointed to the position of Shared Services Human Resources Director for the Town of Adams. This position will be shared with the Town of Williamstown and the City of North Adams. Consistent with Section 10 of the Town Charter, I am pleased to present Ms. Farrell for your ratification this evening. The Town of Adams was a lead community in applying for a joint community compact grant with Williamstown and the City of North Adams for a Shared Services HR Director, a position that each community agreed would be beneficial. The grant award is in the amount of $100,000, which will cover 1 year of salary, benefits, training, and other startup costs. The conditions of the grant award require each community to fund the position for 1 additional year beyond the initial year. Therefore, the communities will be proportionally sharing the cost of this position spread over the fiscal year 24 and 25 budgets, and beyond should each community wish to continue this position in the future. An intermunicipal agreement, an IMA, is being finalized by the participating communities and will be brought before this body for approval in the near future. The intermunicipal agreement will incorporate the grant obligations, management oversight, and schedule requirements of the position. A hiring committee made up of staff from all 3 communities was in unanimous agreement that Ms. Farrell was the best fit for this position. Carol holds a master's degree in public administration from the State University of New York, the College at Brockport, and comes to us after previously working in local government in New York State for the villages of Pelham and Pittsford. Most recently, Carol worked for the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, where she served as a community planner. Ms. Farrell was hired at an annual salary of $62,000 annual and began her shared duties last week.
Okay, could you indicate with a shared HR director, how's that going to happen in each community? Where the location, what, days, kind of the split up there?
So it's a brand new position for us. All 3 communities never had a shared HR director before, let alone an HR director for any position. So it's a brave new world that we're entering in. The intent of the grant agreement, which will be essentially memorialized in the intermunicipal agreement, is that each community, at least in year 1, will generally try to share the position equally. However, just like we've done with the veteran service agent position, which we've shared now with at least 8 other communities, I think, for quite a few years, particularly in year 2, the time that Kara spends in each community will be based proportionally upon which the community pays more towards the cost of the position. So generally speaking, North Adams is a larger community. It's based on population. They'll pay a little bit more. They'll get a little bit more of Kara's time. You'll see that in the intermunicipal agreement, and that's where all 3 communities now are putting their heads together and making sure everyone agrees with that. I think in practical application, a lot of the work that Kara will be working on for all 3 communities will be similar in nature and probably applicable among all 3 communities. For example, in my conversation with the mayor of North Adams, I know that they're interested in updating a real deep dive into their personnel rules and regulations. Town of Adams' last update was probably 2015 or 16 in our book, so we have Kara working on that. So that work, standardizing some of those rules, personnel rules and regulations, will benefit each community. We're also attempting to standardize some practices and also eventually looking at the benefit package. How many weeks of vacation does a new employee get? How many years of vacation does an employee get after 5? What do our collective bargaining agreements look like among the 3? Williamstown has other initiatives that are a little bit more of a priority for their community. So I think in practicality, that's how it's going to work. But as we cautioned Kara, she's the first one in the job. Great Barrington has done this. We're not reinventing the wheel. Most of the documents that we use to apply for the grant and what we've used to propose to management the IMA have already been dealt with Great Barrington. It's just, I think, for Williamstown, North Adams, and Adams, we're 3 fairly large communities. I think among all 3, you probably have about over 500 employees, I would say, that, some type of tending to. So we're just going to go day by day with it, and Kara's certainly capable of it. She's enthusiastic about it. She's enthusiastic about municipal government, and she's definitely enthusiastic about being in the Berkshires as well. In terms of office space, Adams is a lead community, so we had office space for her here. So even though she may be here in the building, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's working on Adams' work. It's just that this is where she's based. Great Barrington is set up the same way as well. So we wish her well in that endeavor, because it's up to her to prove the concept.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Rick?
Yeah, would it be safe to assume that just because it's not our day, that if there's an issue, same thing
Yes.
with the other communities?
Yes, you'll see all that in the intermunicipal agreement, but everyone's tangentially agreed that when one community has a project that's time sensitive, she'll be focusing on that.
Anyone else? Howard?
Well, welcome,
Thank you.
Ms. Farrell. When, in your work, since we've never really had a professional HR person, at least in recent memory, inevitably, you're going to come upon some observations of a strategic nature that can really be a benefit through policy changes at the level the Board of Selectmen would be interested in. So I would request there be some kind of reporting of observations and findings, not on a regular basis, but on some way that the Select Board could learn what we've been missing for the last so many years, that we should know about and actually make a proactive policy to the benefit of the town.
When Kara's done with, the project will be a while, but if, this board has the regulatory authority over the personnel rules and regulations. You haven't seen any because we haven't had anyone to dive into it and update it. There's definitely portions of it that need to be updated, and that's really where Kara's going to be working on. So when she gets to the point where she's made those observations and realized, wow, this is really archaic, we need to update this, we'll set up a workshop meeting where she'll come in, present all that, and then eventually you folks will vote for it or against it at a meeting. Kara's also, the position is, we haven't changed any of our existing personnel rules and regulations because she's not here every day either. She's a resource to the town administrator and to Crystal, our finance director. So our day-to-day practices where we're dealing with personnel issues or whatever always come to Crystal and I still. And then what we do is we'll delegate those to Kara for digging into.
Yeah.
She's a staff resource at this point.
Just as an example, with the rising healthcare costs, there could be a benefit for entering into an aggregated contract for healthcare with all the towns, with the healthcare providers. That's the kind of opportunities, and that's significant dollars. That's an example of a person in this position being able to get information from all the towns. Yes, and policies and procedures, work and benefits are important, but there's some huge opportunities, and so we just want you to know the board is very interested in those opportunities.
Well, good, me too.
Christine?
Nothing, just welcome aboard. Nice to have you as a resource. I know serving on the Personnel Subcommittee, we've been looking to update the policies and procedures of the handbook, and so I think it'll be helpful to have somebody going through that with a fine-tuned comb. So we're looking forward to hearing more.
Likewise.
Joe?
Yep. Out of curiosity, who was on the selection board?
Carrie Burnett, representing the City of North Adams, myself, Crystal Wojcik, and Bob, I can never pronounce Bob's last name, Town Administrator for Williamstown.
Okay, yeah, so that there was 4 that made up the decision, 4 individuals?
There was a second round. There was a
Okay,
second
yeah.
round. I met with Mayor Maxey and their CAO, Kathy Ead,
Yeah.
and then Carrie Burnett again.
Okay.
So that was
Yeah, I'm
my-
not adverse to the position because it's grant funded and it goes for a 1 year. But my concern right now is that we don't have a job description.
Yes, we do. We have a job description. That was
I
part of
haven't
it.
seen it.
You're not going to, because
Okay.
that's the rules and regulations stipulate that that's the town administrator's responsibility. So we got together in-house and staff, we put a job description together, we went out, we looked at what other communities were doing, we used the Great Barrington model, we presented that at the personnel subcommittee level, and then it came back to the town administrator to implement. That's consistent with the rules and regulations of the town of Adams.
Okay, so in other words, as a selectman, I can't see it?
You should be able to see a copy.
You can see it anytime,
Yeah,
absolutely.
request.
Just
Well-
a simple request, and we'll send it to you.
Okay, and the last question is, how long did you work at the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission in your role as planner?
I was there 13 months,
13 months, okay, yeah.
approximately.
Yeah, and I noticed a lot of your work was done in New York State, and you'll have to learn a little bit about Massachusetts, for sure.
Yep, each state is a different animal.
You're right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, but luckily, a lot of HR is federal.
Right.
Some of
Human
HR is
resource,
federal. Yep,
not all
so-
of it, but some is, you're
Yep,
correct.
yep, so that's,
Okay, but that was my main concern, that, you just mentioned, Administrator Green, that we didn't have, the way you termed it, anything written down because it's a new position. And I always like to see what, what something encompasses.
I think it's a 3-pager, I think, the job
the
description.
job description, yes.
Normally, what we do is, it was the same process as ever, but just so everybody knows. Sometimes we have to update the job descriptions. I have found in my time here, the job descriptions have been relatively thin. They've been very, very broad. Sometimes that's advantageous, other duties as assigned. But anytime that we go and we post a job, we look at the job description, we update it. Bree and Deb Dunlap before her primarily did that work. With Kara now on board, eventually, not right away, but eventually, that'll be one of Kara's responsibilities to make sure all the job descriptions are updated. A lot of that work in our rules and regulations and special act puts all that in the town administrator. And that might have worked out well in 84, 85, but we've grown as a town, we've taken on other things, so we really need some of that administrative help to stay with. That's how things get stale, because we can't look at it all the time. In addition to the job description, what we do is job solicitation. We kind of take the snippets, the juicy parts really of the job description, and put that into a posting. And the posting has a lot of the boilerplate language in it, the salary range, all of that, and then that goes out and that's what gets disseminated. And then we ask people, if you want to see the full job description, please let us know, we'll send it to you. We still have the same standard job application form that we've been using for years, we have that. All that gets compiled. When the window closes for it, we take that, we go through it, we usually have a hiring panel, we try to keep it to 3 or 4. This one was large, and it took us a lot of time because we had 3 communities with it, and that's what took some time to do it. But that's generally the process that we follow. And we put together interview questions. Mass Municipal Association has a really good website. We try not to reinvent the wheel. We go through there. They have a really nice clearinghouse of questions. We put the questions together. We do a round-robin format. Then we sit down and we discuss, and then we try to make the best decision that we can.
And one other question, if we okay this position today, does that start the year in motion for her?
It started when yes, January. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so she's already doing the job, in other
She
words.
showed up one day last week. She did Williamstown one day last week.
Yep, and then a
Yeah.
couple days in North Adams, and today is what, Wednesday? 2 days in, 1 day in North Adams this week, and 1 day in Williamstown was today.
And nothing bad about that, other than we hadn't even made a vote yet.
That, unfortunately, this meeting and the last meeting, the timing is very difficult to do this.
Okay.
And it's ratification. She was here for 1 day. I feel like I know all 5 of you fairly well with her resume, and that, I like to think that we don't put candidates who aren't qualified for the position in front of you.
I
And
never
it's a-
said anything about
No, and it's not implied.
qualified.
It's not implied at all. But unfortunately, this is one of the things that we talk about at the General Government Review Committee, which is we try to move. In this situation, it was very hard with shared services, and a lot of times we haven't started people before because they have to be ratified, and they actually sit at home and lose a paycheck because they've given notice. So it's a moving target. We do our best with it, and we're happy to bring Kara on, and we hope that she gets something out of the position and finds it rewarding.
Yes.
Okay, what is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to ratify the appointment of Kara Farrell as the Shared Services HR Director for the Town of Adams, the Town of Williamstown, and the City of North Adams at an annual combined salary of $62,000.
Motion by Christine, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Rick, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Kara.
Thank you.
Okay, next on new business, I'll get this name right. Ratification of Stephen Scrocky as transfer station attendant. Town Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This letter is to advise the Board of Selectmen that Mr. Stephen Scrocky has been appointed to the position of part-time transfer station attendant for the Adams Transfer Station. As provided in Section 10 of the Town Charter, I am pleased to present Mr. Scrocky for your ratification this evening. Steve Scrocky was a longtime member of our Department of Public Works. Mr. Scrocky retired from his position with the Department of Public Works at the end of 2022. Despite retiring, Steve expressed a desire to remain involved with town operations and contribute to our community. The role of transfer station attendant was vacated at the end of December unexpectedly, and Mr. Scrocky expressed his interest. We're excited to welcome Mr. Scrocky back in this new limited capacity. He was hired at a rate of $16 per hour and began his duties at the transfer station this past weekend, and that is correct. Unfortunately, we had a gap where if we didn't put Mr. Scrocky to work, we wouldn't have been able to operate the transfer station, so we did so immediately. I felt comfortable doing that with Steve. Everyone knows him, and certainly his dedication to the town. This position, as everyone does know, is we're attempting to fund this position solely from the revolving fund. We'd like the transfer station to become self-funding. This doesn't mean that Steve will always be the only attendant. We have the job posted. We'll continue to recruit people. I don't believe, Bree, we've obtained any applications at this time. I think ideally we'd like to have 2 or 3 people perhaps in the position down the road so that not everybody's always working every Wednesday and Saturday. I know Steve travels, so at this point, we backfill the position with a member of the DPW, generally on overtime, and that's more costly because they are at a higher rate of pay on overtime. So that is our goal, but we're grateful for Steve. We didn't miss a day because of Steve's ability to step in, so we're grateful for that.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve to ratify the appointment of Steve Scrocky as transfer station attendant at a rate of $16 per hour.
Motion by Christine, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Rick, discussion?
Yes, I'm more than happy. I've known Steve forever. I just worry about his health. And what's happening up there is the last guy we had was good because he went to everything and people didn't like that. And so what it needs to be is that if we're going to make this area, the transfer station, viable economically, we got to have somebody who's putting the hammer down.
Yes.
Because I've seen many times, and I think everybody may have, people go up there, they got like 4 bags, they got one with the orange on it, so they put it in and they watch where the attendant is, and if he goes into the hot, bang, bang, they're gone.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we haven't talked about it much, but I think it's imperative for the public to know that the reason for the rules, the reason for the permit
Right.
is so that the people of Adams have access and bear the cost of their transfer station. If we didn't have a permit on there, folks from other communities would come and use the facility. The facility is not free. It costs money to remove all of those materials, with the exception of the scrap metal, from that facility. That's why the permit. What we did learn is most people don't like the stick-on-window permit, and that's feedback. We had no feedback channel to give that to us. Now that we know, because that's what most of the people have said, I don't want to put the permit on my car, but the attendant has to see the permit, we're looking at another way that's probably more palatable for folks. However, I also let everybody know this. From the time that the last attendant began work until the time that he left, I believe the treasurer said we brought in an additional $4,000 in either second permits that people had sold a car and didn't buy another permit to put it on the new car. It's only $10. And then the other issue was people not having a permit at all. That's $4,000 in lost revenue. We still carry a $60,000 tax rate funded transfer station line item. Our goal is to get it money in, money out, and we don't have to have it on the tax rate, at least not in the amount we have. We're making progress. We appreciate everybody's patience with it, but unfortunately, at the end of the day, the last transfer station attendant, as I shared with the board, the resignation letter, he left, frankly, because of the way that he was treated by members of the public who were using the facility. And at the end of the day, he may not have had the best customer service skills, but as you said, Joe, he was certainly doing his job. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. So, you know, Steve is a great guy. Everybody knows him.
Yep.
Happy to have him. But please don't take advantage of Steve.
Right.
He will do what's right
Yep.
for the town.
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, unanimous decision. Next is item C, discussion of fiscal year 2022-2023 Community Development Block Grant Program. Amen.
Exhibit A.
Pass these down for the CDD discussion.
While Eamon's doing that, in getting set up, I'll just set the stage quickly. The Community Development Block Grant Program is really probably the #1 funding source for the town of Adams for most of our community development work that we do. We are not an entitlement community, which means we're not entitled for a block of money. We have to compete. We compete each grant cycle. This is usually the first step in us visioning from a policy standpoint. What do we want to spend that community development block grant money on this cycle, if we're privileged enough to be awarded that? The next step is a public hearing. Normally, we do this at a workshop, but again, our calendar has just been saturated, and we've had conflicts, and so we decided to do it tonight so that everybody can start thinking about it. You'll pretty much hear the same information at the public hearing, give or take, and then the board can vote after that public hearing in terms of what you would like the Community Development Department to apply for. This year is tough. Eamon and his staff, Becky, they've been working very hard to try to figure out what we do. Our needs far exceed what's available, or frankly, what's even in the criteria. So you heard enough from me tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Director Coughlin.
So yeah, I'll just echo what Jay said. You know, it's a very important source of funding for the town. Currently, we have 2 staff members who are at Town Hall because of CDBG funding, and allows them to do a lot of important work for the community. This year is an interesting application, which is due in early March, so we're about 6 weeks out, I think now, from the application deadline. There's, I think, $48 million available statewide for the competitive grant round, and it's a combined FY 22-23 application. So the town is eligible to receive $1.35 million, but so a pretty significant sum of money. For this year's application, we would include essentially staff salaries for 2 positions, and those are divided up amongst kind of 2 buckets. There's an administrating the grant, so funding for administration, and then also funding for what's called program delivery, and that's implementing the other activities that we apply for through the grant. Typically, we've included funding for our housing rehab program, which I'd like to continue funding. I'm looking currently at around 10 units over the 2-year implementation cycle of the grant. So probably around 5, for around 5 units per year. And then we're also looking at a large construction project. It's been a real bear getting that construction project together. Originally, we were looking at trying to fund the Memorial School building, or more, either bathroom improvements for Memorial School or a number of other small projects there. The guidance we've received from DHCD has basically told us that the building is ineligible for funding because we already received funding in 2018, and there has to be 5 years between any application for a senior center type project. So based on that guidance, I don't believe the Memorial School is eligible for funding. It's been a little bit of a scramble to pull together another construction project, but what I'm looking at this year is doing some repaving and sidewalk replacement within our slum and blight area. VHB we're under contract with VHB. They're currently working on a design. We're looking at Albert Street, Victory Street, a portion of Pleasant, and a portion of Randall Street. And looking at doing basically total sidewalk replacement and a mill and fill repaving project on those 4 streets. I'll get more information from VHB, whether they can include all of that, or whether all of that's going to fit within our budget, or if we're going to have to reduce that scope of work by a little bit. But that's what I'm targeting currently this year. On the 15th, as Jay mentioned, on the 15th of February, I'd like to hold the public hearing, and at that time I'll have a much more detailed budget on the projects and the salary information that we will be applying for, and the board will need to take a formal vote on that. So I basically, the housing rehab program, I'd like to continue that. I'd like to continue pursuing this repaving and sidewalk project. I guess to jumble things up a little bit, The guidance I would like from the board, and this is kind of getting into the next item on the agenda, is whether to include a request for design funding for the Colin Grain building, and to look at the stabilization of that structure. Are there any questions about the CDBG application, though, as of now?
Questions from the board?
Yes, the chair, there's demolition monies, right, within the community block grant program, monies for demolition of buildings?
It is eligible, or demolition is eligible, yes.
Yeah, because I'd like to see some money put aside, because Route 8, that blue house has been there, and I know, John, that's been a pet peeve of yours for quite a while. We just did it over. It'd be nice to talk to the present owners of the old Cumberland Farm and to get going on the mobile station, so those blighted areas as you come into town are no longer visible. And I know that we had worked on getting the tanks removed, and now because something, what was it? The hydraulic jack?
It was a lift. It was a lift. And that was an additional about 70,000 that we didn't anticipate, and that actually took the money that we had earmarked for the blue house. So it's one of those things where we're trying to prioritize with it, and you haven't necessarily heard everything yet about the tower building, but some of that slum and blight work is definitely on the agenda. All that's left is the mobile stations. While we're on that topic, is I believe almost all the environmental work is completed. What's left is for DPW to go in and demolish it, because we're attempting to save money by having our forces do it. But there are costs associated with that, removal of debris, rental of equipment. So we're not sure when we're going to be able to get to that. It's one of those things where every time we dig into it, well, we didn't really anticipate that cost yet, or we don't have that identified, funding, so we have to wait. So we're there. Blue House is on the radar for sure. Cumberland, the old Cumberland Farms, their tanks have been remediated. They do intend to put it on the market. We've sent them a couple of interested parties, but yes, that corridor is high priority.
Yeah, because once again, it really would, top it off when you're coming through, because everything looks quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one of my thoughts for demolition money, because, the longer these blighted places stay up, the worse they get and the more dangerous they get. And so, in short, that's just one of my thoughts. I'm not sure what the board thinks about that, but.
It's something to look into. It's a process to go through. Each property has to be basically classified as blighted or not, or contributing to blight or not, and has to be in an approved slum and blight area plan. Our slum and blight plan is reaching the end of its life cycle. I think it's basically once it's approved, it's good for 10 years, and I think it's going to expire in either next year or 2025. I can't remember, but it's sort of reaching the end of its life. So there's a chance to get a new slum and blight area designated and look at including some different properties in there. And then also, I will add, we did ask and inquire with DHCD about use of CDBG funds for demolition. The response we got is that none of the towns eligible for the competitive grant round, which we are, have ever applied for demolition funding. It's something I think the bigger, gateway or mini entitlement or entitlement communities apply for, which makes me think that demolition is not necessarily would make for a strong application from us, maybe from a bigger or larger community. But
I didn't realize that, because I looked up the grant. I wanted to see what was eligible, and demolition was one of the standards that the money could be used for. And I don't know about what you just said about the money for the bigger communities, but that was just one quick thought I had, because we have so many blighted houses in town. Really, it's sometimes taking down a building, at least we're starting it.
yeah.
Okay, that's all I have right now with a thought for it.
Okay, Rick? Christine?
No, wait.
Howard?
No, I think it's pretty clear. Thank you for presenting your thinking.
So no action required this evening.
No, not this evening. However, as I mentioned, we'll have the formal public hearing on the 15th. The board will need to take a vote. It'll be imperative to have a quorum for that meeting on the 15th. Really want to have everybody here for that, and because it's we're required to show all the documentation for that meeting in our application, or for the hearing in our application. But yeah, as I said, I would like guidance though on whether to include any sort of design funding for or request for design funding in the application, and I'm hoping to get some of that guidance tonight, and I can fill everyone in more on the details of that building.
Yeah.
So,
I'd be interested in hearing more. I know you gave us a packet of information last week.
Yeah, so-
I apologize, I don't have mine with me, so if you could walk us through it.
sure, and I have a couple extra,
Agenda is-
copies of the study if you'd
Yes,
like.
Mr. Chairman,
All right,
that is
thank
the
you.
next topic, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, good. Good lead-in, right?
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I did invite the Historical Commission here to be part of this conversation. I don't see any of them here. Cone Grain Elevator, 1 Cook Street, was constructed, I've never found an exact date, somewhere in the early 1900s or late 1800s, adjacent to the rail line. There's 2 buildings essentially at the site now, or at 1 Cook Street now. There's the grain elevator, which is the very prominent and larger of the 2 buildings. And there's also a smaller second structure there adjacent to the rail trail. They actually share a retaining wall that we refer to in the Community Development Department as the barn. It's a much smaller building. The Cone Grain Building is a local landmark. It's very well known within town, and it's also to folks who use the Ashwell Cook Trail a lot. The building and the property were acquired through tax title by the town, I think in 2012 or 2015, somewhere around then. And since then, the town has been working on redesigning that property as a pocket park along the Ashwell Cook Trail. To this end, through our last CDBG round, we received a $400,000 grant to construct a new pocket park there. This will include a small dog park area, fenced dog run area, gravel pathways, picnic tables, benches, new trees and plantings, etc. We hope to go out to bid on that project within the next few months and hope to complete construction hopefully within this calendar year. Early on in the conceptualization of the area as a pocket park, the potential for the rehabbing and reusing and integrating the buildings into the park design was recognized. It was thought that after we completed this, the park construction, we could move on to rehabbing those buildings as a future phase of park design. To explore that, we asked Austin Design, their architecture firm out of Brattleboro, Vermont. They looked into a building reuse study, which you have a copy of. We used approximately $26,000 of community development engineering funds to fund that study, which also included an evaluation of the buildings by structural engineer Stevens and Associates. The study recommends that we remove or demolish the smaller barn structure on the site. Originally we had thought about using this as almost like using the building as almost like a band shell, or you could have community theater performances or things like that. But the building just really isn't right for it. It has very low ceilings, and we think that its location right in the middle of the park, it could be probably better to just create more park there. They also, the architects and structural engineers looked at the grain elevator building. It's in extremely poor condition, and a significant investment is going to be needed simply to keep it standing and up in the air. Most concerning are a very, very large hole that's in the roof of the building now. You can see kind of where it is on page 9 of the report. It's difficult to see if you're walking along the rail trail because it's kind of tucked out of the way, but it's a pretty large hole, which is letting all the snow and rain in, and as well as a large flock of pigeons. Additionally, the report and talking to the architect, essentially the south side of the building, or of the elevator portion of the building, is unsupported. It doesn't really have any structural support leading directly to the ground. Sort of the outside shell of the building is what's holding it up. So there's not a lot of internal support. And the report notes that basically structural failure is impending. The facilities department, AKA Jerry, inquired with contractors about repairing the large hole in the roof, and when they were unable to find anybody interested in taking on that work. Based on our conversations with the architect and from the report that they've provided here, we estimate that it's going to be about another $100,000 roughly, give or take $90,000 to $100,000, give or take, in engineering and design that will be needed to explore how to stabilize the building. And then the architect's current estimate for essentially just stabilizing the highest portion of the building, the tower, the grain tower itself, is currently at around $700,000. And if we want to undertake stabilizing and rehabilitating the office areas, the cost estimate goes up to over $1 million. And when I say stabilization, the $700,000 and $1 million cost estimate, that's basically what's needed to put a new roof on the building, keep the weather out, make the floor stable, replace footings, ensure the building's not going to fall down. It doesn't really, turn the building into anything essentially useful for the town. It doesn't necessarily make the building habitable. There's still, we might get a couple of light bulbs. DPW could maybe use it as a place to store equipment, but it certainly wouldn't be, bathrooms for the park, or a snack stand or something for the park, or exhibit space for historical commission was something else we had originally thought about using it for. So it basically turns the building into a monument or a shell, and keeps the building up and standing. So it's a very significant investment. To be really honest, I'm conflicted about what to do with the Colin Green building, and it's something I think about a lot, and it's caused me a great amount of stress and lost sleep over the last few weeks. So I'm really looking for guidance on how we want to proceed with this, whether we think it's something to continue to invest in, and then more specifically, whether we want to request design funding through the CDBG grant this year or not.
I'm also conflicted. I'm sure the board's conflicted on this because the building is very unique. Built in 1850, it said in here circa 1850 from the Historical Commission. If we were to go the route of tearing down all the buildings, all that concrete structures, foundation type, there's two of them there, what would be the cost to do that?
Yeah, it's something probably between 90 and 140 is the estimate. We received two estimates from demolition contractors. Hilltown Demolition provided an estimate to us, and then also Associated Building Wreckers out of Springfield. Are they out of Springfield?
Yes.
So they both provided quotes, and the range was $90,000 to $140,000.
So I'm concerned about the safety of that building because we're not going to get to that building for at least a couple of years.
Right. That's a point I don't think I maybe was clear about too. CDBG is, I think, probably the only, unless we do major town meeting appropriations to fund design and construction for the building, CDBG is really the only route we have with grant funding. The building's not eligible for any of the big state historic grants. And frankly, big is, they give out $1 million a year statewide. So the building's not on the historic register, so it's not eligible for any of that funding, and it's just a small pool of funding as it is. So CDBG is kind of the only route we can go. And it's going to be a multi-year effort, I think, through CDBG if we want to go that route. So first we'd have to apply for design funding. We'd have to go issue an RFP for that. We'd have to go through the design process. Then we'd have to request construction funding in a subsequent year. And, this year we're up for 1.35 million. Sometimes, for instance, the last grant round was only 800,000. So it could take two rounds of construction funding. So it's probably 2 to 3 years out if we were successful in funding it that way.
So this would make a nice park. The reason I have concern is because we do have a lot of projects, as been mentioned by this board. Great Lake Glen is taking a lot of effort and sweat from the employees of this community and from the board, and it's really taken up a tremendous amount of our time. We also need to get that Ashwell Trail completed to the North Adams line. We still have that left to take care of.
Yeah.
Many roads need to be repaved, and there's just a lot to do. So I was always in favor of this project since the inception, when Jim Bush was former selectman, was a member of this board. However, the safety concern that I have and the total cost to get this completed with everything that we have, at the time, we didn't know we were going to get the Glen, and now we have that. It's a major, massive project over many years to get that in operation. So, again, it's the thought that maybe it's time we start making some difficult decisions, that we can't do everything. So that's all I'm going to say. I'll pass it on to the board.
I have a comment question. Nationally, there's been an upswing in public support for, saving old historic buildings because, and so my question is there like organizations, nonprofits that are like funded by the foundations and such to restore old buildings without looking for an economic benefit? So that we could sell it to them for $1?
I'm not aware of any off the top of my head or in this area.
Okay.
Something I could try to look into.
I don't want to put anything on your plate. I'm just, would that be a viable approach?
I don't know.
Okay, so and the second thing is, there's a lot of really creative, quirky people out there with a lot of money. If we put out an RFP for alternative use of the building and, sell it to them for $1, would that be a big effort to do that?
No, I don't think so. I suppose it could be done.
I can see something like that going on TikTok and go viral, and some guy, some tech billionaire could say, you know what, I could really do something with that.
I hear a volunteer next to me who's looking to start up this process.
I'm thinking of not going
I was like, I can't wait to follow you on TikTok.
because that's a huge, landmark for this town.
It is, yeah. I don't mean to make light of it.
No, yeah. So, yeah, I think, but to John's point, to get it off the town hands and find somebody who's really passionate about it, that's really the line of reasoning I'm going down.
One cautionary tale about that is, as Amy mentioned before,
Yeah.
we've worked very hard on the Hoosick Valley Coal and Grain Dog Park project.
Yes.
In order to access that, you have to access essentially the property line of the grain tower.
Okay.
So if that were to happen, the town would have to be sure that it sells it, donates it at this point,
And that would
to
be-
a friendly
That would be
person.
in the agreement.
We would have to make sure that's an agreement, that the town reserves its right of access over those parcels, because we already have the funding and the obligation to build the dog park.
Yeah, and I'd have to look too. I think CDBG, there's weird rules with, lease. If you fund a project with CDBG, if you then take in lease, funding from a lease or things, there's strange, complicated.
So just, the conflict I'm going through, the right side of my brain says find a creative solution and save it. The left side of my brain says the numbers say take it down. Okay?
It's hard, it's a hard decision.
Yeah. Rick?
Oh, I was just gonna say, there's also easement issues, because the house right behind there, there's easement to get to their garage and whatnot.
Joe?
Well, all I can say is that it's really an historical building. You don't see very many like that. There's been a few letters to the editor, people driving through town that noticed it and felt compelled to write a letter and say, boy, it was so exciting to see one of those grain elevators. And every time you take down a historic building, you lessen the history of your community, because the rail was, got us where we were at the beginning of our, time as a community, and helped transform us into a manufacturing center and things. So it's a beautiful building. I don't know where to stand on it, and I just want to say that I went down there the other day and on my walk, and I saw Republic was in there doing work. I think it was Republic on their white trucks. They were down there, and I noticed, this is a little aside, but there's a lot of rock walls that need to be taken down because they're falling, and you can't allow kids to, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of stone walls in there are falling down, and I know that...
Also, as part of the park design, we're going to stabilize those walls, and they'll be part of the...
Yeah, I
part of the
remember,
future
that's
park,
why
so.
I'm getting at that point, for kids to jump on, but, once again, that's gonna take some work to make them to the point where they're safe, because a lot of them are falling down. I'm not worried about the concrete piers or concrete walls, those are intact, but a lot of those rock walls are in really tough shape.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's all part of the park plan, is to deal with those and try to make it part of, integrate it into the design and stabilize them, make them so there's something that people can walk in and around and through and enjoy.
Yeah.
So last thing I'll say is that definitely would like to save it, and I've always been for this, but when you indicate that one corner of the building is not structurally sound, right, the building inspector could come in and condemn it or whatever, but one more time, what is the cost to fix that building again?
If we want to stabilize just the...
To stabilize it, not to
Just to
be,
stabilize the-
nobody in there.
Just to stabilize the tower, the grain elevator
Right, we'll
portion.
call it, yeah.
I think the estimate, the last estimate we got from the architect was $700,000 or $735,000. If we want to include some of the other, like the administrative portion of the building that's closer to Cook Street, if we include that in that effort, it would be around over $1 million.
Then we would have to come back again, because we're just stabilizing. We would have to come back again and add additional funding to...
Well, yeah.
To ensure that for the future, that's going to be structurally sound and safe for those that use the trail and use the park, that grain tower is going to be able
It
to...
would stabilize and secure the building, but it wouldn't be much more than a monument.
That's all it is.
Yeah. It would be a monument. DPW could put some, I don't know, a mower in there or something, some equipment. There might be a couple light bulbs, but that would be about it.
Okay. Christine? Yeah.
So, yeah, I have more than just TikTok jokes. I did want to ask a clarifying question. So, you're talking about $750,000 to $1 million to stabilize and make it a monument at this point. And this is all part of the CDBG conversation. So if the board were to give you the guidance to go forward with the stabilization, that means that we would not be applying for the repaving, the sidewalk replacement, and the housing rehab?
No,
We're favoring the...
We have to fit it into the overall $1.35 million budget.
It just means there would be less
Yeah.
money that we would be putting into the repaving, the sidewalk replacement, and the housing rehab.
Amen.
Yes.
Can I just,
Yeah.
just to clarify, we were,
Would you please come up to the podium? Thank you. People at home can hear.
Oh, yeah, that's,
Okay.
right. We would only be applying, we're not at the construction stage. We can't apply for any CDBG funds for construction without having basically a set of construction documents in front of us.
The design is approximately $100,000. Eamon thinks and Becky thinks might be able to get it down to 80. That's going to be a design that's going to either tell us how to stabilize the building or how to safely take it down. So that's,
No, it would tell, we'd have to define the scope. It would tell us how much it's really going to cost to stabilize the building.
right, so up front, the board has to make a decision, do you want to spend the money to get another report on paper as to how to go about stabilizing the building? Then another round down the road or another source of funding, $750,000 or so to just stabilize it.
Yeah, and, I mean, you know, the $700,000 to $1 million estimate is based on a pretty preliminary evaluation by the architect. They've been in the building a few times. They looked around. I think if we go through the construction document phase, and once we get out of that and get a more detailed estimate, those kind of cost estimates never go down once you go through that amount of detail, so.
So that's a minimum of 2 years out before we're even touching the building?
Yep.
That's continuing to deteriorate and become a safety hazard?
Yes.
And there's nothing in this round that we can do?
Just because we're not at that stage, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Originally, I'd hoped that we would get this study done. We could use community development engineering funds to get those construction documents done, but it's just too costly. My community development engineering budget is 65, I think, 70,000. So it's it would be over one whole year of my engineering funding, or engineering funding for the department.
And Joe had asked the demolition question, and that
Along here. This meeting is back in session. The power is back on. Welcome everyone back. You survived it.
Yep.
Okay, so again, Eamon, we do not need to make any decision this evening. There's going to be an open forum for any community resident that would like to provide their inputs, correct, in regards to CDBG grant.
Well,
What just happened?
it would be good to have some guidance about whether we want to include this in the application or not, but.
Well, our final decision is in 2 weeks, right?
It is until
But it would help you-
until the 15th, so over through 3 weeks
4
away.
weeks?
Yeah, 4 weeks away.
But it would help you to have some idea from the board of which way to go. Okay, anything, any suggestions from the board?
Yes, I spoke briefly to Eamon when the lights were out. The Department of Interior has a lot of money that, through the last funding to revamp buildings, and if you went through the Department of Agriculture and you could prove your point that this building is historical and there are not many left, that's a possibility of funding. It may be a long shot, but they have a bunch of money that was, well, that's when Donald Trump was president. He wanted to get a Democrat in from Montana, and they put in a bunch of money where he was a co-sponsor. They got the money, but he lost the election. So there's a lot of money out there in the Department of Interior for building, putting a lot of money in the federal parks, and so it wouldn't hurt maybe to call Congressman Neal and just
You went out, the lights went
talk
off.
to somebody in there and see if it fit into the scope of it. Not, it may, I don't know, but that's just a suggestion.
Anyone else from the board?
So before the lights went out, I was trying to get to so you're looking for guidance from this board with regard to the CDBG grant application. And is there anything that you've talked about this evening for the coal and grain building that you are looking to put into the CDBG grant application this year? But if we're saying go this route, like you wouldn't be putting in, I'm trying to get a gauge here as to the You said you wanted guidance. I assume it's because of this application coming up. So I guess what are you looking at? Like, what are the options that you want us to be making decisions on, or at least providing guidance with regard to the CDBG grant and Coal and Grain? If you could narrow that down.
I'm looking for guidance on whether we want to request approximately $100,000 in design funding through CDBG for stabilization of the Coal and Grain building.
Okay. And not the demolition?
I don't
Because you don't believe that would be...
I don't believe demolition is is good to pursue through through the grant round, and I think there's a possibility they would not get funded, so.
Okay.
And what is the alternative for that 100,000? If we did not put it toward the design for the stabilization, where else could you apply that money?
It could certainly help out, we could use it for the housing rehab program or for this upcoming street and sidewalk project that we're looking at, so.
Thank you, that's very clear. Okay.
Or save it for the following year, because it's a 2-year cycle,
Right, we could wait, we could do nothing, and the next CDBG round, we could put in for design funding at that point, or, if we're able to find the design, fund the design another way, we could apply for construction funding. But yeah, it could wait, we could wait, take a wait-and-see approach.
If we wanted to accelerate reducing blight, it's better to have the money sooner, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm more inclined to focus on, prioritize reducing blight over that building, given the circumstances you described and the cost involved down the road. That's my guidance.
Christine?
I'm more inclined not to include the design for Coal and Grain in this round of CDBG and explore maybe some of the other options that have been discussed this evening.
So who would explore those options? Would that be your office that would be contacting Congressman Neal and everything that's been brought up this evening and other avenues? Is that something?
Yeah, it's something we would.
Is that something you don't mind doing and it's part of your job? And
Community development can look into it.
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure. Okay, I'm inclined to, same thing, just not do the 100,000 this year and wait and see. And Rick?
Yeah, it's an awful lot of money to fix that building, but I think wait and see is basically saying, it's coming down. Because the longer you wait and see, the longer it's gonna take to get anything done. And by then, Mother Nature or whatever is gonna take it down itself. So, I think wait and see just means basically we're gonna be taking down the building.
Joe?
I have no comment one way or another.
Okay, it seems like we have two wait and sees. Howard, I think you also do not want to have the 100,000 going to the study.
I want to free it up for other priorities.
Okay, as I think Rick has also agreed. And Joe doesn't have a input. So,
All right,
does that give you an answer?
that gives me an answer, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you got one.
And do you have any comment on that, on our response to you?
I'll move forward with the CDBG application as I've been
Yeah.
considering up some, and like I said, I'll have a much more detailed budget to present on the 15th, at the hearing on the 15th.
And then we should return to this subject of the park and the Hoosick Valley Coal and Grain buildings at a workshop, I would think, when you have looked into some areas that have been brought up this evening, if it's got you made any progress or not, or we should probably talk at some point about that.
Yeah, I can definitely talk to Jay Bree, we can get it on as a workshop meeting in the future.
Okay.
I just have one more question. As far as rehabilitation to buildings, do we still have a target area where that money has to go? Because I know in the past there were targeted areas where...
Yeah, the target area, My understanding is that we sometimes recall the target area and there's the slum and blight area. They're the same place, they're one and the same. So we define that area based on a survey, which was last done, I think, in 2014 or 2015. And so we're working on that. And it's a lot, basically, if you're working within that area, it's a lot easier to, for projects to be eligible, essentially.
So do we have still a targeted area, or are you going to create another one?
No, our slum and blight area is still good for a year or two, I think.
Okay, so where is it?
I don't have the map with me, but it basically, it runs up Route 8 onto Summer Street to some extent. I can provide a map. It's got quite a interesting boundary. But again, it's based on, BRPC helped us to prepare it in the past. It's based off of, you basically have to survey every building and every street. So, every sidewalk gets rated, every road gets rated, every building gets rated. And there's I can't remember the thresholds, but if it's over a certain percentage, that street or that area gets designated as part of the slum and blight area.
I thought it was the downtown and partway up Commercial Street.
That's what I thought it was, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of the downtown. But yeah, it extends all the way down, the Route 8 area, Route 8 South, where we just did the major road project, and then north up on Howland, I think even. I'll provide a map.
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
information, I think Spring Street is also another area.
Yes.
Spring City, that also.
Yeah, and actually that's something I didn't mention. So we'd be working with, for our housing rehab program this year, we obviously prioritize when we get applications in, we try to prioritize them if they're in that slum and blight area. And we'd like to kind of, within the target area, have a focus within the target area of Spring Street and try to improve that area.
I do have one last.
Sure, go ahead, Howard.
One last question on the Coal and Grain Building. Given that there's going to be a park with a dog run,
Yeah.
and I imagine that's going to get a lot of public use, how can, looking at it from the angle of the best and highest use of the park, what should happen to the Coal and Grain Building so the park is the most effective, so it doesn't degrade from the experience of the park?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. Becky and I have thought a lot about, how the buildings are going to affect, I think, the constructability. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Can you ask a question, Greg?
You want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
Yeah, the question is, given the park is going in there and it's going to be for public use, what can be, to optimize the use of the park, what should happen to the Coal and Grain Building?
In an ideal world, we
Yes.
would renovate the Coal and Grain Building, and they would be used as, community space and public bathrooms and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that would be, I think that's always been the vision, is that we would be able to reuse these buildings and incorporate their use into the park use.
Given the budget to that is prohibitive. Yeah.
But with this new information and these new numbers that we've discovered, it's much more difficult to envision how that's going to happen. So,
Okay, so if the building was taken down, would that be neutral for the park?
I think it'd be neutral for the park. I think it would, visually, the buildings as they stand now are not great. Once that park goes in, those buildings are gonna look a lot worse. I think there could be some safety issues with those buildings as they stand now, once the park goes in. So I think there would be some time between when the park goes in and when we decide to take any kind of renovation or demo action on the buildings, where there'll be some negotiating safety issues. And I think that in general, they kind of break up the use of the park as they stand now. So that park will go in and there'll be kind of like disjointed feel to the space for a little while until we decide what to do. Does that answer your question a little bit?
I mean, what I'm getting from that, from a practical standpoint, is the building should come down, if we're not going to renovate it.
It depends on, well, there are two buildings, and so I think it's two different decisions to make, but the
Right.
primary building that people are concerned about with the Coal and Grain
Yes.
is, I can't answer that question. I'm the same as everyone else. It's like, it's the toughest question to answer, if it should come down or not. There's arguments on both sides.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so no impact on your CDBG moving forward, but we should have a workshop in the near future to address this situation.
Yeah, that sounds like
After you do some investigation on any funding sources, things like that. Okay? All right, I think we're good. Amy, you good?
Good.
All right. Next on the agenda, subcommittee liaison reports. Howard, anything?
Nothing for me.
Christine?
I don't have anything.
Rick?
Nothing.
Joe?
Yeah, just to say that the Agricultural Commission is up and running. The members seem, at this present time, pretty psyched to move along and do some good work for the town of Adams.
Joe, they elected a chair.
Yes.
What was the name?
Sonia McQuirk was the chair, and the vice chair was Natasha Bordeaux, and the recording secretary, because we were told by Jay that there was nobody within the town hall that could spare the time to be a secretary, so Megan Bantold said that she would step forward and be our recording secretary, make sure the minutes are done properly, and she's a well-educated woman, and she'll do a good job.
Okay, so the town administrator and myself will meet with the chair in the near future, just to welcome. And have some discussions on working together. Okay, I have nothing. Announcements in good order. Howard?
Just want to make a general comment about the Glen and saying that how important it is for community engagement going forward, that this is an extremely important development for the economic development of the town, because outdoor recreation is a big growth industry, and economic experts are talking about we're headed, a good chance there'll be a recession which will affect a lot of businesses, but outdoor recreation tends to actually could benefit from recession, because people are going to want a vacation close to home and not fly overseas, and the Great Lake Glen is a very attractive destination for outdoor recreation. So for the town to move forward and develop it is a very, very positive thing when it's going to be done in a sustainable way, so people who value the outdoors and nature will appreciate and value the experience there. So I just want to put the board's position of why we supported it. It's just a critical piece in the development of this town, especially for the economic times we're headed toward.
That's it. Thank you. Christine?
You know, just to piggyback on that, I think that was really well stated, Howard. You know, that was the first step in this process, was the December 14th meeting, where the Board of Selectmen selected a developer for the campground. That's not the end of the public process, that there are future meetings. There will be site plan review, Conservation Commission, for public to come and speak. I will also mention it has been really nice to receive quite a few positive comments about the development at the Glen, and people in this community seem really excited to see something moving forward. So for those individuals, you know, thank you for making sure that you say that you're in support, and I hope that people who want to know more will come out and learn a little bit more at the public stages, the other public stages.
Okay. Rick?
Nothing.
Joe?
Yeah, as far as the Glen, I think we got ourselves in a little trouble because we lacked transparency early on for people to come and to voice their opinions about it. And as you can see, there's been a little tug of war going on with people who enjoy it and love nature, and it's just such a beautiful place that I think now we're going to have to backtrack, and I'm hoping and praying that the environmental community don't come out in earnest. I think we gained their trust, and I'm hoping that it stays that way, but it's always a movable target with environmental groups. They have a very strong presence, and so I just felt, and I've said this before, not just for the Glen project, but I think we're lacking a little transparency in this community.
I disagree with that statement. One of the people who wrote the letter to the editor was actually in the room and left during the presentation, and then wrote a letter saying that there was no transparency. That meeting was posted well in a week's notice. It was mentioned at a televised meeting that it would be happening and what the topic would be, and the RFP was out there far in advance. That whole process was public. So I disagree with the comment that it was lacking transparency, and I couldn't let that just sit there. I'm sorry.
Well, that's
Sorry,
your
Mr.
opinion.
Chairman.
I just see it the opposite. I'm not gonna, cause something, but the person you're alluding to, I think she came in and she was like, wow, look at all these people here. It's tough to go up and put your point out. There's a nervous consideration about that. And I think another problem was that we probably should have did that during televised recording of it and not during a workshop, because I think more people would have been tuned into what was going on, because a lot of people, they just saw that we picked a developer. And I'm not getting into it. I voted for it. I'm an older person. I'm not going to be around much longer. I'm thinking of the solvency, the economic solvency of our community, but equally important to me is being an environmentalist and knowing that mountain. That's important to me, that it's protected in a way that people in the future can enjoy it. And there are some aspects of it now that I don't like the fit. And so that's where I'm coming from it. So, everybody has their opinion about anything and everything. So I look at it in the scope of an environmentalist, because that's a beautiful mountain. I'm up there often. I was up there today. And so it's a beautiful place, and it needs to be protected while being developed.
Okay, a lot of discussion happening on the social media and letter to the editor, but being transparent, the board is here the first and third Wednesdays of the month, I believe, and we have a public comment, and anyone who has any thing they would like to ask, any question or any comment they would like to make for or against, they are always welcome at these meetings. We never see anyone here. There's a lot of discussion behind the scenes and on the computer, but if I saw, it'd be great if people have concerns, they would come and speak to the decision makers right here, and we welcome you. And would like to see you down here with your opinion. No one shows up. Just a lot of talk out in the social media, which to me, being not, I don't say, old, but I'm getting up there too, and I'd rather hear from the person themselves. If you got something to say, you got a problem with this, or you got questions, please come down to our meeting, and we will answer any question that you have. We will provide you with the information you request. And that's the way I see it, is transparency. You need to get out off your couch, get down here and ask us questions, and we will respond to your satisfaction. At least you will have the information you request. Keep talking on that Facebook, not gonna do much until you come down to this meeting. We make the decisions and nobody's here. Reporters are always here, but, so that's the way I see it. Come on down.
John, I just want to add to that.
Yep.
I want to comment on Christine's point of transparency, because the credibility of the democratic process is all about transparency. So in the week before the meeting, I knew, it's not rocket science to know that when something's happening to Glen, the environmental people want to know about it. And I called one of the signatories of the letter the week before that meeting, and I said, this is what's going to happen. So call all of your colleagues and let them know this meeting is going to happen. I didn't have to do that. And that person showed up at the meeting and did not stay for the presentation, and I think there was a lot of it was not actually, I think, let me just say this, the town I, on behalf of the town, invited people who were going to have opposing points of view, and that person did not stay for the full meeting, nor had her colleagues come. So, I'm just going to say, just put that out there. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, also, can I just offer a quick clarifying, in case anyone does want to view it, it actually was recorded and posted, and it is available on the Northern Berkshire Community Television website. So I just want to clarify that, yes, that was a recorded meeting.
It's not on TikTok.
It's not a, not yet. Maybe it is. I'll put it there. Just in case anyone at home is really excited about viewing that and they want to learn more, they are absolutely able to do that.
And just to reiterate, the developers have committed to fully engage the community on any and all issues related to this project. And they plan on holding a meeting sometime in February so people could put their input into the process of.
Okay, great, thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Executive session.
Oh, yes, thank you. Geez, here we go again. Duval, trying to get out of here. All right, we have an executive session. Can I have a motion to go into executive session? This will be a roll call vote, and when we come out of executive session, the only business will be to adjourn.
Make a motion, the board enter executive session for purpose number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, and if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body. This is basically a briefing on both the clerical union and police union contracts.
We have a motion by Rick. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Second by Christine. Any discussion? This is a roll call vote. Howard?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
John, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Joe?